And welcome back to the Practice Players Podcast. This is episode 8, and I'm Nick.
David.
Daniel.
And I'm Jordan McCabe. What's up, everybody?
And so we're back here with Jordan McCabe. So I won't take too much of your time. Just tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are now.
Well, first of all, you take up way too much of my time already. I see you, Nick, probably for about 8 hours a day, because those of you that follow the show know that Nick is part of UNLV's basketball team, which I am also a part of. So I guess we can start there and then backpedal our way through my life. Started playing basketball when I was real young, ended up amassing a few followers on social media along the way. Rather coincidentally, it wasn't one of these like Logan Paul set out, this is how you gain 1 million followers thing. Not that I have that, but it was all kind of just by happenstance. It was during the mixtape era of Ball's Life and all that stuff. So grew up in that era of high school, was lucky enough to catch a few eyeballs. And, then I moved on, went to West Virginia for 3 years. That's full of interesting stories right there. Met a lot of great people, great connections. Basketball wise, wasn't my best decision I've ever made in my life, but hey, you learn. And now I'm here at UNLV, which basketball wise, much better decision for me, in terms of system and everything like that, but don't regret anything. And that's kind of the rough outline of my life.
I did want to talk to you about your commitment to West Virginia. I know you had offers from DePaul and Missouri and Minnesota and some other noticeable schools. When you were in the recruiting process in high school, what was it about West Virginia that triggered you and made you want to go there?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. People often ask me that question in terms of what my recruitment was like. And my recruitment was pretty interesting. In the fact that, I don't jump off of any scout's book in terms of this guy, is a guaranteed surefire, whatever, starter, double digits a game, whatever. I just don't. I'm 5'9", take, no shoes off. I used to say 6 foot, but now I'm just going to be completely honest. I'm past the point of, it's actually better to say 5'9" than 6 foot, because everybody knows you're not 6 foot if you say you're 6 foot. So before I get too off topic, with West Virginia, the biggest thing that jumped out to me was it was the Big 12. That when it all boiled down to it, it was my best offer in terms of where that program was at the time. Missouri had went through a few coaches. Coach Anderson gave me an offer there. That was actually my first ever offer, but that didn't seem like the right fit. Minnesota was definitely debated quite a bit. Coach Pitino was there at the time. And you know what? I just looked at West Virginia as it's the Big 12. It's the best conference in college basketball year in and year out. And on top of that, there was this thing that loomed over the West Virginia decision, and that was doubt. And I think a lot of other people said he's just not he'll never play for Hugs. He's not fast enough. He's not athletic enough. He doesn't play defense, which I didn't in high school at all. And still, as Nick will show you some practice clips, I barely do it now. But that was a big thing for me. I wanted to, almost be overly stubborn. I wanted to prove people wrong. I know that's super cliche and stupid, but I wanted to, prove a lot of people wrong in terms of, I can play for Uggs. I can play at the Big 12 level, even at 5'9", and a guy who's not ultra athletic, not, like I said in the beginning, anybody who jumps off the page. So that was a big thing for me. A lot of it was stubbornness, but like I began, West Virginia, though it didn't work out in terms of me getting the role that I wanted to, I got to, I started more than a handful of games, pretty much the back end of my freshman year, all the way pretty much through my sophomore year, for a Hall of Fame coach in a program that, is always going to be respected. There's a lot of things and a lot of positive that I can that I can take from my experience at West Virginia. It took me a while to get there mentally after leaving and while I was in it, because it was pretty dark at the time, to realize how much good really did come from that. But yeah, that was kind of the decision process for me. It was the Big 12, and then it was the fact that nobody really thought I'd ever play for Hugs.
Yeah, and bouncing off of that, Coach Huggins, legendary coach, known for his sort of fiery personality. So I was just wondering if you had any, funny stories, whether it's him chewing you out or something funny he said that would be interesting.
Do I have Coach Huggins stories? Man, I got a lot of Coach Huggins stories. How many of them can I say on the air? Not a ton. That's just his personality. Let me think here. One thing that I will tell you about Hugs is everybody sees the kind of guy he is on the sideline. They see the yelling. They see the, face go beet red, chewing a ref out, seeing him getting tossed, whatever, in a player's face, and in the 90s, maybe even more physical than just in his face, when that was more, allowed, and that's how he got his players to get up and play. The one thing about Hugs is you see that side of him, the side of him that really hit home for me and is a big reason that I still communicate with him on probably a monthly basis, is the fact that he's that coach during a game and on the floor. But then we've had players and situations that arise during a college season, right, that are super negative, not good. Could be off the court stuff, could be any number of things. And I'm not going to, go into detail on somebody's life, but I've personally watched Coach Huggins do everything he could to help that kid out of a situation in order to, make him, give him a chance to play. He'll give you 3, 4, 5 chances, kids that other schools wouldn't touch. We had multiple players on our team that other schools wouldn't touch, and those guys to this day will go to bat for Hugs no matter what. They're closer to him than anybody else because he was willing to give them a chance. He wasn't gonna, be the guy that is their best friend. That wasn't his goal. It was actually quite the opposite most times. But that was the biggest thing for me with Hugs, is all the stuff that other people didn't get to see, and just how good of a person he was. Like, at the end of the day, doesn't always align with what you get to see on TV, especially if they're losing. I'll think about stories too as we go. If I get one, I'll throw it out there.
So I wanted to ask you, obviously, like you said, you rose to got a little bit of fame in high school during the whole mixtape era. How do you balance, because obviously you create content, YouTube, podcasts, things like that. How do you balance, getting work in because you're always in the gym, and then also creating that kind of content for people out there?
Yeah, that's a really hard thing. And for athletes especially, because in the world of NIL right now, it's all about brand building, this and that. And I'll have people ask me questions kind of like you just asked me, Nick. And to be honest, I don't have a ton of answers when it comes to the social media side of things, because people just assume nowadays, well, if you've amassed a certain amount of followers, you must have had some sort of plan, right? You must have done the YouTube creator, the Mr. Beast, post whatever X amount. I don't have a formula. This is something people don't understand. I lose followers all the time. Like, it fluctuates. It might go up and it might go down. Used to bug me, especially, into my college years, which was weird. But the biggest thing for me right now is kind of understanding where my priorities lie. And that is really difficult, considering I had followers. So I felt like I needed to do something about that. I needed to create content and keep up with this and that as I got into college, because that's the thing. In high school, it's great because you got, you got 5 big companies that are sports media companies. They all got hundreds of employees across the country, cameramen that'll work for them. So they'll go to the game. You just show up and hoop, right? And then guys will take that, or girls will take that back, and they'll cut it up, and you got a mixtape that night. And if one pops or blows up, well, then you get followers, right? But you see there, I didn't do anything. I didn't post that video even that got me followers. That's the biggest thing. I think that's the fastest way to grow is when other people start, pumping out your stuff. Anytime that happens and you get on those big, sites, whether it's Bleacher Report or Overtime or Ball is Life, once that happens, then you get followers, at least in the basketball world. So I think kids need to really understand, especially in the NIL space, if you're creating content, you better know why. And if it's to try to gain followers, you're going to be pretty disappointed, because in order to gain followers in our world, you have to say the most ridiculous shit, do the most ridiculous shit, do something that's going to catch attention, like eyeballs, right? It's great if you're Jake Paul, Mr. Beast, whatever, and that's all you've been doing and there's nothing else tied to it. But I don't see how that really works in the basketball/college athletics world, right? Maybe some kid will nail it. Maybe he'll be able to do a destroying type crazy video once a week and then still perform on Saturdays. I think Destroying could have been the one guy to really do it, obviously, if he would have been in the NIL era. But that's the biggest thing, is I don't think there is really much of a balance to it, as much as it has to be understanding where your priorities lie. Because you said, me being in the gym, that's my number one priority. If anything NIL or content related impacts how much time I spend in the gym, that's an immediately no-go. It's like a girlfriend. Like if she's impacting how much time you're in the gym, immediate no-go. You know what I'm saying? That's just how it has to be looked at for these young athletes. And I don't know how many people are preaching that across the NIL space. I saw Jay Billis talked about how great NIL was today, and I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing through, but I definitely have a counter to it. I'm surprisingly enough, NIL is not my favorite thing in the world. It's been, great to do and take advantage of, but I don't think zooming out, looking at the NCAA and college basketball or college sports, I don't think it's a net positive, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a phenomenal insight. I had a question prepared, but seeing that you were speaking on NIL, I know Dan has a question about that. So, Dan, why don't you ask your question, and then I'll bring mine back later.
Yeah, you kind of partly answered it, but I was going to ask you, you've played now in pre-NIL and post-NIL. So I wanted to ask, how has it benefited you specifically as an athlete? Not even the people around you, just you specifically, and has it been good, bad? What have you learned from it?
You learn about the business side of things. At least my personal experience with NIL, you learn how to work with a brand and this and that. That didn't have a huge impact on me personally. I knew that was coming at some point, that I'd be able to somewhat be a billboard for a brand. Like, let's take today, for example. And this doesn't happen every day. It just happens that today I was posting something for Puma and Champ Sports on a shoe. So what that looks like is they reach out through my agency and they say, hey, we want you to post one story, one Instagram post, and a TikTok, and you're going to get, a few $1,000. We're not talking tens of thousands. We're not talking hundreds of thousands. And I only say that because I want kids to gauge it based on what my followers look like, with me being at like 250,000 people. That's kind of what you're looking at. Like if you're Mr. Beast, now we're talking obviously way, way different, but kids have this warped perception. And I think it's really important to realize that a vast, vast majority of these players are not necessarily getting rich through brand deals, okay, with NIL. Because then on top of that, you got agent fees, 20%, taxes, that's 30. That's cut your money in half right there. Like, people need to start being realistic about what it really looks like, and the fact that it takes time. You got to go out and you got to, create, like me and Nick were talking about, you got to create a piece of content that's worth posting for that brand, right? So that's my personal experience with NIL. I'm not a 5-star recruit. I'm not a top 10 guy. I'm not a guaranteed lottery pick. Never was, never will be. Those guys' lives, from what I've heard through, different avenues, is much different. And this is where my huge problem with NIL comes in. And I think it's horrible for college athletics, is the fact that these guys now and girls believe that they have the leverage to go into their coach and or donor's office, house, whatever, on the phone and say, I will play for you if you find me X amount of dollars. And that's where you get the big headlines. That's where you get the quarterback who I don't even know the story, but it was like 13 million or something like that. You get the $500,000 whatever. He drives a G-Wagon, this and that. That's where you get that stuff. You're talking about, once again, just like any other market, your top 1% of anybody in that market is going to live life a little bit differently. Now, when I say that, I'm all for people getting paid. Like, I really am, especially, I've been around and had teammates who that money could be life-changing money. That money could change, the whole outlook of not only their lives, but maybe it's their mother's life or their father's life or their brother's life. And a lot of the guys I play with are really good people, and that does positively affect. So I don't want to downplay that part of it. My issue has always been and always will be this. If you are going to a coach and or a donor or anybody related to that school and saying, I want X amount of dollars because I'm going to be your point guard and I play this well and I'm better than him or whatever, that's pay for play. That should be completely outlawed and completely illegal. If that same player wants to hire an agent, or if he's so savvy that he wants to contact Coca-Cola himself and has some sort of connection, and they will pay him $500,000 for X number of posts and this and that, that's legitimate. But some of this stuff, like, I don't even know what these posts are. Half of these players are posting like, oh, support our school through this company's at whatever NIL conglomerate. And it's like, that company's not even trying to make money. That's not a consumer. A consumer has nothing to do with that company. You're just posting to show this shell of like you doing work for a company, and then that way you can get paid. It's almost like so they don't get audited and like really looked into. Like, no, he did post. Oh, okay, but what did he post for? And who? That's the weird part for me. And I don't know how you regulate that, but I think that's where NIL is not good. I think it's really, really actually bad. And I know coaches don't like it. You wouldn't like it if, you're now a college coach and you got kids coming in saying that they need, 1.5. Like, dude, there's rookie deal. What are you talking about? 1.5. I don't even know if you can play. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is different. This is college basketball, and it's a very like pure part. It's a very pure version of basketball that I think is somewhat being corrupted by pay for play. I think pay for play's got to get completely, I don't know, just wiped away. I don't know how you do that though. So that's my thoughts on NIL.
1,000%. I thought you hit it on the head. I did a project for this last semester. I actually interviewed Billis for it as well, and we were just going back and forth. And he was saying, and I agree, I'm a big proponent for athletes getting paid, college athletes, but the whole pay for play aspect of it is ruining the game and ruining recruiting and ruining what college basketball is all about in a sense. And an idea that I came up with is where all the money's being made is the TV deals. So if players want to go, Jordan McCabe, Nick Walters wants to go do their own deal with Coca-Cola, do that independently, not through the school. But instead of these NIL collectives, what you should have is these billions of dollars of TV revenue. Even if, let's say UNLV basketball makes X amount of dollars and whoever you have your TV deal with, 5% of that gets divided up by the 15 players on the roster. So even if you have, $1.5 million, each player gets a $100,000 check from the TV deal for that season. And I think that's sort of where you can get those direct payments coming in and you can avoid pay for play.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I just, the one thing that I always thought is going to be an issue, and it has proven to be, I don't know if it's an issue, but it's just a fact that anytime it's like even, it's never going to be even, right? Because you're just going to have guys who are more valuable. That's just, and I guess who is determining the value really is a big thing, right? Because then that's where you get dicey too. Because if you're just going to go by PPG, okay, well, I already know you're a casual basketball fan, and it's going to cause, rifts in the locker room and between certain guys. It's just going to cause problems. But yeah, I think in a perfect world, I could see that. So you think the TV deal kind of takes the place of the collectives all that we see, these NIL collectives all over the place?
Yeah, like I'm all for, players being able to use their name signing deals, but these collectives themselves that at some universities is literally just the coach telling donors to pay a player. I think that part of NIL is where it's sort of corrupting the game, and where most of the money for these schools is made is with these TV deals. So even if, divided up the players, however you do it, if even 5% of that money goes towards however much that team or that conference generated, all of a sudden these players are going to get their fair share, and you don't have to worry about pay for play as much.
Yeah, I guess then your question is, whose pockets are we draining 1.5 out of that TV deal, right? And are they going to be cool with it? And that's the hard part too. But I agree, something has to be done. And these collectives, I think, are absolutely hilarious because they provide next to no value, at least from what I've seen. And I don't have a problem saying that. We work with one, and they do good, and it's not their fault. They're just trying to fit in where they get in where they fit in this new market. But right now, there's no value. Like, we're not having meetings. Guys don't have resources in terms of like wanting to go there and really understand what it means to brand build or how to communicate with a company. Anything that actually is going to have value past the point that they're done playing at that university, as far as I've seen, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, we could do a whole episode on NIL, but to sort of get back on track here, going back to, your social media following, your fame, obviously everyone sees on the outside and sees that and thinks it's so cool. Some people might get jealous, but I feel like what no one talks about is with all that fame and with all that spotlight, it still has its negatives. You still amplify, the trolls, the haters, the people coming for your neck. So what advice would you give, especially to younger athletes coming up in this sort of TikTok era, for dealing with, those haters, those trolls, while also focusing on their game?
That's a great question. What advice would I give to young players coming up in this age? This answer changes quite a bit, and I'm still trying to figure it out as well. I just ultimately, broad brushstroke here, social media is super negative to a college athlete's mind. It's just super negative. It deteriorates it. It's horrible. You get thoughts and you read certain things that sit in there for way longer than they should. And you'll have super stubborn college athletes, because they're all stubborn to a certain extent, which is what makes them good. But they'll be stubborn enough to say that, oh, it doesn't affect me. That's just not how your biology works, like the chemistry inside your brain. When you read something good or read something bad, it's an involuntary release of chemicals that you don't control. So whether or not you say it doesn't bother you, it does, even if it's subconsciously and it's just really bad. So with that being said, I always struggle because I'm like, well, why do I even do social media anyways? And for me, I do enjoy content creation. I enjoy certain things. Like, I enjoy documentaries. I enjoy vlogs. I enjoy things like that, really give you kind of an in-depth inside look at somebody's life that you might find inspiring. TikTok dances, not as much. I just don't see that being a need for me. If that's all TikTok or social media was stuff like that, I just wouldn't have it. But I do follow certain people, and my For You page is a lot of the stuff that I like, and that's the inside look at whether it be professional athletes or Tim. I don't know how to say Tim's last name. You've probably seen his. He's this dude who lives in New York. He does vlogs every day. Anyways, whatever. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. So yeah, what I would suggest is, if you're a college athlete, if you're cool with it, and maybe I should do my own experiment with this, is turn the comments off. There's now toggles on pretty much every social media site that allow you to turn comments off. For sure during the season. I would do that. Twitter, I'd probably stay off Twitter. For whatever reason, it's just it's a hotbed for just people who want to talk shit. So I turn comments off. This is a really idealistic world. I would turn comments off. I would stay off of Twitter during the season and try to post and ghost as much as you can. Just post it, leave it alone. Don't look back at it. Go on to making the next thing. And it goes back to what we were saying in terms of Nick asking the question about balancing content. You have to ask yourself why you're doing it. If you're doing it because you want to get likes and followers and subs and all this stuff, your emotions are always going to fluctuate within that. And pretty soon it's just not going to be enough, no matter where you're at in terms of that. So I think a really healthy way to look at it is expect very little of it, but do something that you can be proud of. Make something that you can be proud of, whatever that might be. Unless that's not your passion, then you don't need social media. I don't think there's a full and complete necessity for social media, but it is part of our world. So I think those would be my two idealistic recommendations. Turn comments off, stay off of Twitter. Twitter, as you guys know, it's fun just to read the absolute chaos that comes out of some people's mouth or fingertips or however you want to look at it. But Twitter's bad. I don't know. I think Twitter's not good. I'm going to scroll on it here in about 20 minutes, but it's not good. It's not good. Too much access. Way too much access.
This summer, actually, I didn't have a Twitter, and Dave was actually the one that was like, you should get a Twitter. And it was more obviously for like a lot of what happens in the college basketball world in Twitter. So I was like, okay, I'll get it. I didn't really expect much. Like I knew people said, oh, there's hate. I was like, oh, that's every social media. Twitter is different.
Twitter's different.
It's like, I there's some Oregon basketball stuff on it. I can't even read. I deleted it. I'll maybe get it back in the summer, but I deleted it off my phone. It's intense.
Twitter's really, really, really bad. It's turned into like a pseudo Facebook where everybody's arguing. And even if it's not about, let's say, Oregon basketball for you, Daniel, or UNLV for me and Nick, even if it's not about that, it's just always negative. It's always an argument because that's what does well on Twitter. So once again, you have this weird obsession that our entire generation has fallen into of how many likes and how many views and how many clicks and this and that. Like we've all turned into like shitty journalists, really. We're trying to just do whatever we can to get likes and clicks instead of just making something we can be proud of. And the people may come and may go or may never come at all. You know what I'm saying? That's just how it should be looked at. But yeah, Twitter's bad. It's straight junk food for the mind. TikTok's got to be probably up there too. But yeah, Twitter, I just don't think there's anything good that generally comes of it. Because even the news, people go back and forth on that too if it's not basketball related. And you just kind of get this weird obsession with watching people argue. I just don't think it's healthy. It's bad. Bad news.
Yeah, it's like that crazy ex-girlfriend who's kind of hot, so you sort of keep her in the back pocket. Never a good thing.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience, David. Is that true?
No comment, but getting into the next question now. Speaking of unhealthy obsessions, which I may or may not have just exposed myself on, I personally don't have TikTok, but a couple of my boys sent me a recent one you posted of Nick, and he's crying when LeBron breaks the record. So we need to set the record straight here, Nick. Is your obsession with LeBron unhealthy? Because personally, I think it is.
I think it is too, but it's not going to change how I act. It was a memorable moment.
That's the first step in recovery is admitting it. So I'm really proud of you, Nick. This is a big moment.
Thank you. I mean, I agree. It is a little obsessive. I think it's 4 different NBA teams jerseys, all LeBron. I now have both Lakers jerseys of him, number 23 and number 6. I will be getting that Magic jersey if Bronny goes number 10 in that latest mock draft. I will be getting that. Probably both of those jerseys. It's a little unhealthy, but I'm not proud of where I am, but I'm not upset with where I'm at either. So
there's a lot of you out there. Pushing. Don't worry. It's okay. There's one side of the fence or the other. There's a lot of you, though. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm not a LeBron hater. I stick with my loyalty. Like I tell people, I'm a Knicks fan. You can never question my loyalty. I was watching Amon Shumpert, Pablo Priniogi, all those dudes, but now we have a godsend in Brunson. So
Is he the guy? He's taking you to the promised land. Brunson is.
I mean, he's taken us to like the second round, which is the promised land for us, I guess. So
Yeah, it is. It is. Who else do they need in New York? Because you need another piece. Brunson's great. He's a unbelievable player. But who else do you need in the league?
The issue with the Knicks is like Brunson and Randall are both like all-star caliber players, but to win, you need a superstar. And that's just what we lack. Like the Donovan trade should have happened. If you have Donovan, Brunson, Randall with those other role players, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, Quentin Grimes, who's a bucket, Deuce McBride, your boy, whose game I love. Like you got those pieces plus Donovan, then it's a little different.
Yeah, they're missing that superstar yet, and that's what I was wondering. Is Brunson looked at in that light? I don't know if that might be a little bit of a stretch to do that. I think that's just kind of setting yourself up for failure. You definitely need another big time piece because he's so good, but there's only so much that he can create at his size and position. But if you give him somebody else, it takes him to a completely different level.
Yeah, no, 1,000%.
I think he'd play better alongside his superstar. I think his game, there's a lot of players in the league that, like, if you were to add a superstar, it would take away from their game. I think he's one of those players that would play at a higher level with someone else like that on the team as well.
Yeah, most elite point guards are that way, right? You look at like Nash and Stockton and guys like that. Without their two, dominant bigs or dominant players alongside of them, Stoudemire, Malone, those guys, you force too much onto their plate. And that's just not how they play at their highest level. Like Brunson's efficiency numbers, I would imagine, I don't know what they are now. They're probably great, but they go up. Like if you get, let's just say, I don't know, maybe a Luka or something like that, or even a Donovan Mitchell, who might be a high volume shooter, but it takes the pressure off of Brunson and lets him play even better, I think.
Yeah. No, and speaking of elite guards, I would call this guy elite in his own right. If you make the league your elite, you had a former college teammate, Deuce McBride, and that team was very good. And I just wanted to get your opinion on what makes, college players that end up becoming pros different and get to that next level, whether it's, a mindset, how hard they work, something else.
Deuce was the only player who I can admit that I played with. I know they talk about Javon Carter being like an ultra hard worker. Deuce is the only player that I can even recall being in the gym more than I was, or more obsessed. And that's no knock to anybody else. I have to be crazy obsessed to even touch the floor in my position. So with that being said, I knew he was a pro because not only did he have some of the God-given stuff in terms of his athleticism, his size, but most guys in college basketball, I would say a vast, vast majority rest on that because it is really easy to go home after practice and, play video games all hours of the night, wake up, do the same thing over, and you're going to have good games. You're going to have okay games. Deuce was so consistent because his preparation was so consistent. And this is the only magic bullet, whether it's in sports or life, in my opinion. And it's just that consistent obsession with the process, the consistent obsession with work. And he had that. I would get to the gym at 6. He'd be there as one of those things. He saw me get in there at 6. Next week he was in there at 5:30. Pretty soon I just stopped chasing him. I just had to, because he would go in at 5:30. He'd have a full sweat. He'd be done. We would go through a 3-hour plus practice as long as Coach Huggins could keep us on the floor that day for NCAA regulation. We were on there. And then you can imagine after a practice like that, where you're playing defense for 2.5 hours, most guys go home. Not Deuce. Deuce stayed after practice. he would work out after practice. He would get certain situational shots in. He'd bring a GA with him, put himself through drills. And then he would go home, and I would find out the next morning that not only did he beat me in at 5:30, but he was also in at 9. Like it's a little bit different level. The only other player who I knew like for sure did that is Tyler Hero, a kid that a guy that I grew up with, a grown man with 2 kids that I happened to grow up with and be lucky enough to call my friend, was a guy that at Kentucky, in the gym every single morning, in the gym every single night. It was 2 times a day, with a practice sandwich in between there. And there was no other option for him. There was no, that was just going to be what it was. And he worked out. I know in the morning he worked out with I think it was a coach or a GA. And he would tell me that by the end of that, he'd be completely dead. He'd have an hour to recharge for practice. He'd practice and he'd come back in at night and get shots up. The formula is there. It's simple. Well, this is a Kruger thing. It's easy, or it's simple, not easy. I think that's what he says. Simple, not easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a simple formula. Get your ass in the gym, work at game speed. We all know what we need to do. I think in any environment that you're in, you know what you need to do to reach your maximum potential. It's just not easy to do.
And speaking of the polar opposite of that, our boy Nick here. No, I'm just kidding. But
Nick plays a lot of video games, so it's okay though.
Where does Nick rank on your all-time walk-on list? And the formula I want you to use is half as a person, half as a player. And then where would you rank him?
Where would I rank him? All right, let me think about my first year. First year at West Virginia. I had a walk-on that posted a Snapchat, and he was doing a one finger in front of his mouth in the gym. The lights were off, but he was in the West Virginia gym, and he was making like a shushing motion, and the caption read, "It's okay, you'll be awake soon." So that one was weird. He never actually made it to our first game. He was kicked off the team. So that was odd. He ranks pretty low. Nick is going to narrowly edge him out. The ones that really jump off the page for me are Spencer Mackey. He was a walk-on, very similar to Nick, short white guy, kind of grows facial hair, kind of like me now that I'm describing him. Kind of doesn't. But anyways, Spencer got in against Texas. We were up by 30. Little slight humble brag there. We were up by 30 at home, and Spencer hit a 3. The place went nuts, and he immediately went into the big nuts celebration where you're kind of holding these invisible 20-pound nuts. So that was great. I don't know if Nick edges. So Nick's bucket that he had early in the season was filthy. Celebration, not all the way there, right? It was the handhold. It was kind of a quick little glance at the crowd going down. It was nice. It was good. It was very subtle, classy. If he would have went the big nuts route, so I'm going to go Spencer Mackey 1, Nick Walters 2 or 1B, and then the guy who said it's okay, you'll be awake soon. I'm going to go him as far down on that list as I possibly can.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, we all know why Nick couldn't do the big nut celebration. But can't say that on air.
No, yeah, it's a condition. He can't help it.
Jordan can talk. I just want the viewers to listen. I don't know why, but for some reason I hit some nasty shots when Jordan's guarding me every time that there's a Jordan versus Nick. It's off the screen. 9 times out of 10, it's a bad shot, but it goes in somehow, and then he comes and tries to beat the crap out of me.
Well,
says,
the weird part
again.
is that he said shots, and the problem I'm having is that is a plural word, And in the English language, Nick, that means that it's happened multiple times. It did happen once, and I will admit that. But I don't know if you've shot 10 shots on the season yet during practice. I tell you need to shoot, but you don't. So we'll let that one slide. Hold on. You guys give me a second. I got to plug my computer in.
No, you good. Yeah, we got some contradicting ideas here.
That was going back to what Will said about how Nick had made a shot since September. So we have more than one.
Listen, I do admit I got to get more shots up, but you gotta keep in mind that there's some plays where I'm not in. It's about 50-50. I'm there, and then there's 50-50 where I just do what they tell me to do, and if the shot's there, I take it. While we have Jordan figuring out his thing, we'll get into the storyline, kind of not really a storyline, but our predictions. If anyone doesn't have any more questions.
Now let's get to it. Let's get to the storyline of the week.
All right. We're gonna all go around and kind of talk about our Final Four predictions. We're about a week away from March. Selection Sunday coming up soon. We got our conference tournaments, all that kind of thing. So let's talk about our Final Four predictions. If one of you wants to go first.
Yeah, I'd say let's sort of all get them out there, see what we have similar, what we have different, and then chop it up.
Okay. I'll start. I picked one team from each conference, or 4 different conferences, I should say. I picked Texas from the Big 12, Houston from the American, Miami from the ACC, and UCLA from the Pac-12 as my 4. I can explain why I did, unless you guys want to go with yours.
Nick, why don't you say yours?
We kind of have a little similar thing going. I'll go Houston. We have that. Miami, the same as well. My Big 12 pick is going to be Kansas, and then I have a Big 10 in Purdue. Those are my 4.
Jordan, you got 4 ready, Jordan, or you need some time to cook?
Dave, you go ahead and give me your 4, and then I'll go.
All right. So I also have Houston, as everyone does. Similar to Dan, I have UCLA. The disrespect from Dan saying the major conferences and not including a Big 10 team, feel kind of disrespected, and I have Purdue in the
I was going to say
Final Four
Mountain West team, to be honest, over the Big 10, but whatever.
That's crazy. But no, Purdue's my 3rd. So Houston, UCLA, Purdue. And my 4th, and I wanted to go on a limb here. I wanted to pick an uncommon one. They're from the Big 12. They're an older team. Debate this later, but I'm going to have TCU. You're the Horned Frog between college football playoff and now Final Four.
Yeah, that's a great pick. They'll make the Elite 8, I think, at least. That's a really good pick.
They're a very good team. All right, here goes my Final Four. Okay, I got Kansas. I got Purdue. I got Virginia. Tony Bennett finds himself back in the Final Four. And I also have, which for some reason not seen on a lot of these lists, I'm going to go the Running Rebels of UNLV. Just get hot in March, win the tournament, find themselves maybe in like just a beach location for the first weekend, just relaxing, having fun, just coast right into that second weekend, and we make a run in March. That's my Final Four.
Hey, I like it. Like it a lot. That would definitely make me happy to see Nick and you there. And we had Justin Webster on earlier, so that'd be awesome. Houston is sort of the common pick in here. UCLA's thrown in here a lot. Purdue, obviously, Zach Edey. So I guess Dan and Nick, why don't you guys sort of touch on why you chose Miami?
I'll just want to first say, Nick, I don't know why you didn't choose UNLV.
That was nuts.
UNLV, but you didn't.
That was crazy.
I want actually you to go first and explain that.
Thank you, Daniel. Put him on the hot seat.
I think Miami's in the Final Four, but I want you to explain why UNLV's not in the Final Four.
Nick might not even be on the team by tomorrow morning if this gets out.
Yeah, if this gets out, there's probably a good chance you won't see me if we make it to the Final Four. I'll probably be a fan at that point. Um, I feel like I did a disservice, so I feel I resent what I said. I can't retract it. It's out there. I want the Rebels to be there, but yeah, I think talking about Miami and Dan, you can kind of piggyback off of what I have, but I just think they've been kind of dominant as of recent. 23-5, they're 13th in the country right now. I don't know why they kind of jump out to me. I don't know, like I just look at some of their games. They beat Duke, and I know Duke's had a down year, but they beat Duke by 20. They're on a, let me see, 1, 2, 3. I mean, geez, like a 7-game winning streak right now. I don't know. I don't know why they just kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Isaiah Wong can hoop too. Isaiah Wong can hoop.
I was gonna say for me, last year that team made the Elite Eight, and they added Nigel Pack, who was a fantastic guard in the Big 12. They might have a top 3 backcourt in the country with Miller, Wong, and Nigel Pack. That is what comes out to me is that team has elite guard play. And in March, we know that teams with elite guard play, that Virginia team in 2019 with Ty Jerome and Kai Clark and Kyle Guy, like those type of teams that can defend and have good guard play, make runs. And I noticed with Miami last year, again, they made the Elite Eight. So this is a team that has 2 returners in Wong and Miller that have already been here. So I feel like this is the step they take with adding Pack is they make it to the Final Four. So that's my reasoning why I have them in there. And plus, like Nick said, they're on a 7-game win streak. They're about as hot as any team in the country right now. So that helps, obviously, going into these next couple of weeks before selection show. You had UCLA with me, right, Dave?
Yeah.
I'm very high on them. If you want to talk about UCLA, we've played them twice this year, and they're outstanding. So I don't need to talk about them.
Goes without saying, Mick Cronin, if you're playing for him, you're playing defense. But they just have so many options, and I feel like it's a good blend of, veteran leadership and guys who just play tough, and Hami Jaquez, Tiger Campbell. Then they have the young guys who can score. You got Amari Bailey, Bona is the center, I believe. He's phenomenal. And then you got pieces like Jalen Clark who are going to be perfectly fine taking 0 shots in 25 minutes and just lock up the other team's best offensive players. So I think they have all the pieces and the coach that you need to succeed in March.
Yeah, I think when you talk about UCLA, there's a lot of parallels with a team that didn't get brought up, who I wouldn't be shocked, no pun intended, Shaka Smart, Marquette. If they make a big run, I don't think anybody needs to really even bat an eye, because they do everything that you just said, Dave. They lock up. They have very good guard play, in my opinion. And his teams, just for whatever reason, like there's never an issue of whether or not they show up. Like they might have an off night, it just won't be. But it's never a question of whether a Shaka Smart coach team is going to play hard. It's almost like the Cincinnati Huggins and the run that he made in the Final Four. I think it was 2010 with West Virginia. It's just not a team that you're going to want to deal with. The other team, if St. Mary's goes Elite Eight, I also will not be shocked. I've gotten a chance on the West Coast to watch them now a few times, which I had never really been able to do. And the young kid that they have, what's his name? Anybody know their guard, Caden? I think is it Mahaney?
Yeah, Mahaney.
Is it Caden Mahaney? I don't want to butcher it. He might be one of my favorite players in college basketball right now. I got to watch. Is it Mahaney? Let's see.
I think it's Aiden. It's Aiden Mahaney.
Aiden Mahaney.
Yeah, Aiden Mahaney.
But yeah, he's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Really good player.
I agree there. Definitely special. I mean, you saw what they did to Gonzaga, so wouldn't shock me at all. But to sort of wrap this up, I guess, let's just go around, say your championship prediction and who you think is going to win that game and sort of like a 20 seconds of why. So whoever wants to start it off.
I guess I'll start. I would say out of the four teams I have, I'm the most confident in Houston and probably UCLA. I think Texas and UCLA are really neck and neck, but I would probably say UCLA is better just because they're one of the few teams that's top 40 in offense and defense. And since 2003, every single national champion has been top 40 in both, and only like 5 teams in the country right now are that, and UCLA is one of them. But then with Houston, we played them in November. Their physicality and their guard play and their freshman Jarris Walker, they're really good. They play so tough, and I don't see them like I think this is their year. They've been at the top of the rankings the entire season. They've never wavered. They're going to win they're going to win the American easily. So to me, Houston, it's their year. I think they win the championship.
I'd probably agree. I think Houston has looked the most consistently dominant. I could see a Houston versus either Kansas or Purdue. I think Zach Edey is just a force to be reckoned with. I mean, night in and night out, I'm looking at ESPN and I'm seeing he has like 28 and 17 boards. Just a casual 28 and 17. I don't know, but I think Houston is my pick to win it all, though. With all that being said.
Oh, I guess we're looking like those analysts on ESPN right now who all pick the same team, because I would also say Houston. I mean, it's hard to go against what they have, and I have them beating Purdue in the championship. Purdue's young. They play Braden Smith at point guard, Lawyer, who's another freshman shooter. But, I mean, Zach Edey, he's doing this in the Big Ten against the best bigs in the country, Trace Jackson Davis, Hunter Dickinson. And as long as he stays out of foul trouble, like, you have to send double teams, and then Purdue will just space out 5 shooters with him. So it's a matchup nightmare. But the one team that I think does match up with them well is Houston. They have a lot of bigs. They play physical. They can rotate them, hit the glass hard, play defense. I mean, Kelvin Sampson might have the hardest playing team in the nation. So it's hard to go against the Cougars.
All right, well, we're not sounding like the analysts on ESPN because I am not picking Houston, obviously, because they weren't in my Final Four. I'll break this down for you. So on one side, I got Kansas versus UNLV. UNLV wins that one in a rout, just dominates the game. All right. On the other side, you got Purdue versus Virginia. Coach Bennett has enough time to cook something up before that first game in the Final Four. Edey is a non-factor, foul trouble. Virginia wins, and we get a Virginia UNLV final in which, hey, we party like it's 1990. The Runner Rebels take it. We are the national champions this year. Once again, Nick, you're probably off the team if this ever gets out.
Yeah, I probably won't be celebrating with you guys as the team.
You will be. It'll just be at a distance. You'll just be like up in the third row. We'll all be like, "Oh my God!" We're like, "Is that Nick?"
Yeah, I'll be
Nick up there.
Yep. Yeah. That'll probably.
It's all right. Pop the top and just paint your chest. You'd be right there with us.
Well, all right. If anyone has anything else to say, I think we can call it here. Thank you, Jordan, for coming on. But with all that being said, PPP out. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.